薄いのアホ。
プリズムパワーメイクアップオーカードレディー。
Welcome to Shojo Tell, where we discuss shoujo manga and tell who's hot and who's not, talk about themes, and just generally geek out. Today, February 26, 2023, we'll be shoujo and telling about the first half of the series Sailor Moon by Naoko Takeuchi. I always say her first name wrong. Anyway, I'm your host, Ashley McDonald, and I'm joined by Anne LaRose. Hello, Anne.
Hello, Ashley. I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I think back when I started this podcast, like 5 years ago, I was like, when I do Sailor Moon, I shall ask Anne. And then I delayed doing Sailor Moon for forever. But so for the people, who are you, Anne? Tell us more about yourself.
Well, geez. So I've been a fan of Sailor Moon since like 1995 when it came out in the US. And like immediately, like it was my jam. Like I loved superheroes and I loved like Greek mythology. And so when I saw like Sailor Mercury like doing her thing, I was like, yep, we're sold. And then, it actually it kind of the first two seasons kind of replayed until like 1997, in which it actually went off air. And at that point, I was just like heartbroken, and so I was kind of like, okay, like I want to find more information. So I hopped on this little thing called the internet.
What? It was new back then. We didn't know what was happening.
New. And that's when, I found all this information about the other series. And around that time, possibly 1998, was when they started publishing the manga in English for the first time. So I was able to feed my obsession through that as well and learn just more about what the powers were hiding from us. So the manga holds like a very special place in my heart.
Yeah, so you read that old Tokyo Pop version?
Yes. I've been through it all.
Yeah. And so now you run the fan site Shojo Power, yes?
Yeah, so about, I think in 2013, I was really into studying like feminist theory, and obviously I'm really into Sailor Moon. So one day a friend said, well, why don't you put the two together? So I was like, oh, I have a lot of stuff to say about this. So that's when shojopower.com was born. And I have to say, like, the original name wasn't Shojo Power. It was like Moon Power. But at the time, like, there was like a fanzine that was kind of got a cease and desist letter. So I was like, well, I shouldn't call I shouldn't call it Moon Power. So the original idea, like I wanted to talk about more shoujo manga and anime, but that didn't really pan out as I envisioned. But that's why it's
like,
Shojo
Sailor
Power.
Moon forever.
Yeah.
That's fair. There's so much to say about Sailor Moon. So, I mean, I normally try to keep the first 10 minutes or so of this podcast spoiler free, so we will still try to do that. But note that this is about the first half of the series. And the series is Sailor Moon, which I think literally everyone has interacted with in some way. So through cultural osmosis, you probably know enough about Sailor Moon to follow this podcast. But whatever, spoiler-free section. So Anne, for the people who may have never heard of Sailor Moon, which I don't know who those people are, but they surely must exist. What is Sailor Moon about?
So one day, Usagi, an average 14-year-old girl, encounters a cat on the street being bullied. And this cat has like a Band-Aid on her forehead, and Usagi rips it off and starts this amazing adventure. This cat, Luna, later arrives in Usagi's bedroom to tell her that she's the guardian of love and justice, Sailor Moon. And unfortunately for crybaby Usagi, she has to fight the bad guys. And her mission is this: to find the legendary silver crystal and unseal the Moon Princess. Along the way, she finds the rest of the Sailor Guardians, the brains of the team Sailor Mercury, the sophisticated Shinto priestess Sailor Mars, the strong but soft Sailor Jupiter, and finally Sailor Venus, who's already a famous hero by the codename Sailor V. Meanwhile, Sailor Moon meets this mysterious masked man, Tuxedo Mask. Is he a friend or a foe? He's also looking for the legendary silver crystal. And that kicks off the adventures in Sailor Moon.
Yeah, just so much thrown at you all at once. so much. So yeah, so you already touched on your level of familiarity with the series a bit, but so I wanted to. I have a horrible confession to make, Anne.
Okay, all right. Please,
Yeah.
please make your confession.
Yes. So this is definitely, I think, my greatest shoujo sin that might erase the relevance of my previous 99 episodes. And it is that I have never watched all of the 92 Sailor Moon anime. I know. Nor have I watched Crystal, nor had I read the manga until right now. And I've only read half of the manga.
Now what was your inversion like? Was it just like so popular and you were just like, I want to be like do not what's popular?
Yeah. So, well, okay. So when I was growing up, it was on TV, kind of at an inconvenient time so I grew up without cable. I think that's also possibly part of the issue. So it came on at like 6:30 in the morning, I think. And I remember watching random episodes of it, but I never like understood what was going on because I think I always missed like 10 minutes of each episode. And like, I just it never like clicked with me. I think the things about the series that other women really like actually are kind of turnoffs for me, like how Usagi is so whiny and like kind of relatable like that. I'm like, no, but I don't respect that. Like, I don't respect that at all. Because I grew up being like mostly a tomboy, and then yes, I will say that more recently. So part of when I started this podcast, I was like, obviously, I have to do Sailor Moon. But I think it was 2017. So I think Kodansha had just announced they were going to do those Eternal editions. They were going to retranslate it and everything. And so I was like, all right, I'll wait until the Eternal editions come out. But then I didn't realize at that time that they were like giant.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think that I'm going to love Sailor Moon enough to like own giant editions.
It's pretty pricey. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, like it's a lot of money, it's a lot of space, and I was just like, I don't know. But so then I kept putting it off, and then now they're re-releasing it again, the same Eternal edition like translation, but in a normal manga sized volumes. But then I was like, this is gonna take forever to come out, and I'm gonna do episode 100. So I'm just gonna suck it up and like cobble together some Sailor Moon volumes and do it.
Awesome.
Yeah, but I also strongly dislike superheroes. So I think we can get more into that later. But I think that is also part of the aversion that I had.
Got it.
To jumping into Sailor Moon. So I realize that I am not starting off on a great a footing here, right? But this is a podcast where I respect shoujo and do not yuck other people's yum. So that's why Anne is here to be like, Ashley, you are terribly wrong. Obviously, I'm wrong. Culture has told me I'm very wrong.
Well, I would have to say, if you did want to attempt like the 90s anime again, like the back half of the first season is actually pretty good, and it moves along pretty quickly. The Rainbow Crystal arc. So I think if you do want to jump back into that, that's a really good place to do it.
Yeah, I think my husband was telling me about that. He was like, wait, because I was trying to watch it with him, and we got like 40 episodes in. So yeah, I think basically through the Dark Kingdom stuff.
Oh, okay, got it.
And then he was like, no, but the next episode, like the next arc is an anime only thing that's actually like really good. I was like, okay, well, I don't know, man.
I will have to say, like, even though the rollout for Crystal has been pretty uneven, I guess you could dive into the second season of Crystal, the Black Moon arc, because the Chibi Usa's character arc is very different in the manga than in the 90s anime. So if you can kind of like push past kind of the uneven animation, maybe season 2 with Crystal is something you want to do. And it's only 13 episodes. So not a huge commitment.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna cobble together Sailor Moon, like the Sailor Moon that I want, and just piece it all together.
And what I was actually, right now is a great time to read the manga. This June, the Cosmos movies will be coming out, which will cover basically the Sailor Stars of the 5th arc of Sailor Moon, and everybody's super excited about this one character that will appear, and she never appeared in the 90s anime. So she'll be animated in her full glory, and I think, it's a great time to kind of catch up and read the manga to prepare yourself for that.
Yeah, and there's so many editions floating around now, for better, for worse, so easily accessible. I guess part of me, I realized that the Eternal editions, I think, were available digitally. So I was like, should I buy that? But then it felt weird because it's like, isn't part of the fun of the Eternal editions that they're like big? I just like kept being like, this is too hard for me. Too many options.
I have to say, my confession to make is that I don't read manga digitally. Like, I think there is like a sample chapter of the Eternal edition on my Kindle. And I don't think that has, I don't know how much it costs. It must be cheaper because I don't think it has any of the
it's
color.
definitely is. It's cheaper, but still more expensive than like standard digital manga.
Yeah. But yeah, I have a hard time reading digital manga. So all the manga I buy are actually physical stuff. So
half the time I feel like I buy digital manga if it's either like, okay, it's like not in physical print anymore, which Kodansha is kind of guilty of. Viz actually also is somewhat guilty of this for like
really
older series.
Yeah.
We're recently doing all the clamp things that they basically just use the old Tokyo Pop translation for. So they only have it available digitally. So like I get locked into it for those things.
Got it. Oh, fascinating.
Yeah. Or like really long series where I haven't been collecting it and I'm like, I need to buy 20 volumes and it's like half the price on digital. So I don't want to be poor. I'm just gonna buy digital. That's how that usually happens. But then so I was just like, I think part of my hesitation too was that I was just like, there's too many different versions of Sailor Moon and it's hard for me to know where to start.
And so the second, we usually refer to the kind of the first Kodansha attempt with translating Sailor Moon as a second generation. So we were all super excited that was coming out, and like broadly in the Sailor Moon community, that translation is just crap. Like, I hate it. Yeah. Like, everybody like hates it. There's this like really famous, like we would make fun of this translation because in the first chapter, Luna is talking to Usagi. She's like, you need to be more responsible, and she's like, you need to live your life more nervously. And you're just like, what is that? Nobody speaks like that. So in the new the Naoko Takeuchi collection, it's using the Eternal translation, and I think everybody loves the Eternal edition translation. So that I would definitely recommend to pick up that version of the manga.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess adjacent to what we've been talking about here is like, I generally ask everybody what their favorite aspect of the series is and why others should read it. But I feel like Sailor Moon is big enough that we don't necessarily have to answer that question. But so I think a lot of people maybe have only seen the 92 anime. And like, I do know that there's a big war between like the anime of Sailor Moon and the manga version and which one's better and all those things. So for people who have perhaps only seen the anime, do you think they should read this and why?
Well, like I was saying before, like this new character that wasn't in the 92 anime, like she'll be in the Cosmos movies. So I think you should like definitely like read up on that first. And but I have to say, like the manga like is pretty funny like the 92 anime. And there's this sense of adventure like the 92 anime. I think a lot of people, what they have a difficult time with is that it goes pretty quickly. So a lot of these like cute, funny episodes in the 92 anime, like they're just not there. And then if you kind of like the villains, like they're dispatched pretty quickly in the manga. So there's even I do sometimes. I'm just like, I wish we had a little bit more time with some of these characters, but I think the main components there are all there. And I think a lot of people are surprised that it's a little bit more romantic. Like Usagi and Mamoru have this kind of antagonistic relationship in the anime, and even when they get together, they're not very lovey-dovey with each other. Whereas I think
Mhm.
they are much more lovey-dovey and romantic with each other in the manga.
Interesting, since I didn't get to the part where they get to just like be together in the anime. I did not know that. I do know that, yeah, I was like, wow, all those Dark Kingdom bad guys, they died really fast compared to the anime. They don't have personalities. Okay, that's interesting to know for sure. But yeah, I am like, I'm not a manga purist, but I do prefer my shoujo manga like as manga over anime at this point. So, but I don't have a good basis point. So, anyway, so we're still in the non-spoiler section. Let's get out of that. So, obviously, as we stated, there's like a million versions of the manga that you can pick up in English. Many of them are from Kodansha. So just again to repeat, so we did volumes. That's very confusing. So of they printed them this way in Japan too. So the initial editions were 18 volumes. Then the reprint, which Kodansha did in 2012, is 12 volumes, and then the newest one, the Takeuchi collection, is 10 volumes. So basically just have that. So, 9, 6, and 5 roughly. Like I didn't check each edition to make sure that perfectly lines up, but that should be roughly what we did here. So whichever edition you have, just first half, which did not end. At first, I almost messaged you to be like, should we just talk about the first 5 volumes? Because that was like 2 arcs. And then I decided not to be a wussy and just stick to my initial plan.
Yeah. So we're talking about the Dark Kingdom arc and the Black Moon arc today.
Yeah, mostly. So from here on out, we will spoil what happens in those 2 arcs. And then it also starts shenanigans with Sailor Neptune and Sailor Uranus. So we just started that, and I'm like, where is this going? What is happening? All right, so Sailor Moon, big episode. So I did a listener poll on Twitter where the question was just curious in what ways you enjoyed the story of Sailor Moon. And part of this I did because I'm one of the rare people that has not ever actually sat down and been like, I'm gonna finish some part of Sailor Moon in full. So I was heartened to see that I'm not the only one on the planet. There were 8.5% of people who said they had never read or watched Sailor Moon. They're probably like 14, but that's okay. So roughly 34% of people said that they had watched one of the anime versions, so either the 92 anime or Crystal. Almost 8% said they had only read the manga, and almost half of people had done either one anime or both anime versions and the manga. So people are well versed in Sailor Moon. Obviously, there's a lot of other media about Sailor Moon. I did go to see whatever production, like stage production, was put on in Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago.
Wow, cool.
Yeah. So that's, I went into that being like, I have not ever seriously watched Sailor Moon, but I feel obligated to do this because I was like going to be in DC anyway to visit a friend. And then he was like, did you know that's the Sailor Moon thing is happening? And I was like, well, now I'm contractually obligated to go see that. So I did. I paid a lot of money for like resale tickets, blood money. So I did write down some of the more interesting listener responses to like weird other things that they had seen of Sailor Moon. So at Chrisette Cat on Twitter said, started with the Dick Dub on Toonami and became obsessed. Discovered a magazine called Smile, first issue too, and it had the Super S manga, which was my first exposure to manga. So to the manga. So everybody, I think my husband was like, can we buy like DVDs of the Dick Dove? And I was like, I don't think that legally exists. Like, I think that was before DVDs.
They do exist out there, and you might just have to like buy them on eBay at this point.
Are they like legit? We couldn't figure out if they were legit or like bootleg.
I'll send you some information.
I love it. Okay. So at Singing Bunny on Twitter said, I went to see one of the musicals that went to theaters in the US and was blown away by the quality of the production. It was so good. I wish we had more access to the musicals.
Oh my gosh, that was kind of insane. So they had, I mean, I don't know if this is what they're meaning, but I would imagine. So so one of the most recent musicals, it's called Le Mouvement Finale, which covers, Sailor Stars. It's a stage show that was in Japan. And they actually put it in theaters, like movie theaters here in the States.
Yeah.
So like I hauled my butt down to, I don't know, Times Square, and I saw it in a movie theater. And they have not done this again since, unless, I mean, maybe somebody else can tell us that they've done this for other anime, but they haven't done it for Sailor Moon since, which I'm slightly bummed about. But they did recently do like a musical festival where like, it was online, and over the course of a few days, you could watch like the Naruto musical, the Sailor Moon, like the Nogizaka musical, and I can't remember what else there were. There was a few more. But that was kind of cool because like, I just had to like, log in and then cast it to my TV. So hopefully they'll do more of that in the future.
I'm curious, how many people went to the Sailor Moon musical in theater, like in the theater that you were at? Was it full? Were you the only one?
Full. It was not a ton of people there. Because, sometimes it's just so hard. Like if it's in the movie, like you have to get your lazy butt off and like go to that one or two times it's available, So that's probably why they didn't do it again.
Yeah, I was like, well. So at Damn, I'm a Token on Twitter said they watched All But Crystal, played some weird CCAM game from France for the Super Nintendo. Germany's old PAL standard was close to CCAM, so the two worked almost flawless together, where American and Japanese NTSC games simply didn't work without a special adapter. If only I spoke French. That's dedication.
Wow. Je parle français, so maybe I can play that game.
Oh yeah, can you go revive that? Go get a Super Nintendo.
It's actually kind of interesting. Back in the day, they did not translate Sailor V into English, so I was kind of like insane, and I was like, well, I want the Sailor V manga, and so I actually have them in French. And I'm unhappy to report that like it's actually kind of harder to read something in a foreign language because like if you don't know one word, you're just not going to understand anything. So
yeah.
I'm glad they translated it into English.
Yeah, I definitely was like, oh, Sailor V came first. And I recently eboed those 2 volumes too. I was like, okay, I guess I need this too for some point. Yeah, the only manga I was so disheartened when Tokyo Pop went out of business. I love Maid-sama. And they had the license to Maid-sama, and they only had translated, they had only put out half of the series. So I started to buy it in German because I had taken German in like high school and stuff. And I was like, I don't understand any of this. But okay. No. But it's okay. Viz came through for me.
Oh, thank you, Viz.
Thank you, Viz. I love you. Okay, so at C Edwards 0527 on Twitter said, the manga for sure. I love the 90s anime, but I definitely prefer the story the way Naoko Takeuchi originally intended it to be. I think that's a very unpopular opinion from my understanding.
Well, actually, one really interesting thing that I read recently was that the musicals are actually Naoko Takeuchi's favorite version of Sailor Moon. Like she
Really?
feels like the vision of the musicals are kind of the best representation of what she envisioned. And I think this kind of goes back like it occurred to me one day while I was reading the manga was that like Naoko Takeuchi was very influenced by the Takarazuka musicals.
Yeah.
They're an all-female theater troupe, and I think all of Sailor Moon is a Takarazuka really, and even like the manga is separated into like Act One, Act Two, kind of like a musical. So
Mhm.
so yeah. So I mean, I don't think that a comment is wrong at all.
I just think in people's hearts they don't usually agree. But yeah, I think Takeuchi, like I think we're gonna get into this later, but yeah, Takeuchi's creation of this story is perhaps a bit wild and not definitely not as she fully intended it to be. So at Albin Ayin, I can't pronounce words, you guys. I'm sorry. On Twitter said the manga, all the anime, the live action. Remembering my reaction when plushy Luna appeared the first time just cracks me up. Okay.
I love Plushy Luna, like totally underrated. And actually, I think I don't know if this is really surprising, but not a lot of people have seen the live action TV show. So
Yeah.
I also really recommend that. I think you can watch it on YouTube and find a subtitled version there. It's how many episodes is it? Oh, I can't remember. I think it is about like 44 episodes. And
That's
I
so
don't know,
many.
it's a lot of fun. I think if you love the anime, you'll love that too.
Yeah, I don't think I registered that there was a live action version because I was like, I know there are all these musicals and like, yeah, Takarazuka inspired things and a million animes and manga versions or whatever. But I was like, there's a live action. I mean, of course there's a live action, but I didn't know that, right? So yeah, so then I asked a very basic question because I was like, you know what, Sailor Moon, I don't have to be creative for this episode too much. So I asked people on Twitter just generally why they love Sailor Moon, and I wanted to read some of the responses, and again, probably have some reactions to them. So I tried to group them by theme, but lots of different ones here. So at Nori sent me an email that said, the friendships are what endear Sailor Moon to me. I love that despite how the core five are so different in personalities and background, they all have each other's back and are fiercely loyal to each other. Some other Twitter responses in a similar vein at instead of writing, I love the friendships. The miracle romance gets most of the attention with the whole defying death for true love, and it's well deserved. But the girls also followed Usagi through time to stay by her side. And the last one in this vein is from at Manga Muse. The friendships between all the girls are my favorite part. I love all the cast and how close they are. Plus, it was the first series after Powerpuff Girls that I watched as a kid where girls were the main characters in an action-based show and had a romance subplot. Is this true for you too, Anne?
I mean, you were saying how you didn't really like superhero stuff earlier, and I guess maybe I'm a little bit of the opposite. Like I love superhero stuff.
Yeah.
So I think mostly that's what really attracted me to it. But it's interesting. I was reading this Japanese scholar, and she was studying Sailor Moon, and she was thinking like, oh, everybody like will love the romance of the show and the manga. And when she really kind of dived into it, actually a lot of people said the same thing, that the relationship between Usagi and her friends, what it was really stood out for them. And in their kind of like real life, like their friends were a character, and each of them played, on the playground, they played a character from Sailor Moon. And so it's kind of like, those friendships in the manga and TV show kind of reflected your kind of everyday life with your own friends.
Yeah, good role playing thing to do on the playground. We're all Sailor Scouts today. Yeah. My one of my best friends growing up was definitely super into Sailor Moon, and like she definitely helped me get into anime, but more I guess I gravitated more towards Shigi Yugi of the things that we liked mutually than Sailor Moon. But she has a cat named Luna, so
as one does.
As one does, duh. Like I guess if she had a second cat, she would name it Artemis.
Actually, one of my friends,
That's how
she
it
just got a cat and named her Luna. I was like, now you need an Artemis and Diana.
Yeah, you're like, you have to get more cats now.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a requirement.
Well, and you mentioned earlier about how like you were kind of like a tomboy, and I kind of like I have brothers, and so I think like in my household, like it was just like the girls in my household were like me and my mom, and so I think for me, like I needed more girls in my life, and so I
Mm,
think that what really attracted me to Sailor Moon. I need I needed more girls in my life, you know. So yeah, yeah. So I wasn't scared of the femininity at all. I was like, this is really cool, kind of feminine. Like you're feminine, but you're also kicking butt. Like that really attracted me.
yeah. And see, I hate young me because I'm like, I should have been totally into that. But I think because I rejected femininity so hardcore when I was a child, I was like, no, ugh, no.
But I think you're not alone. I hear that a lot from people who say that they kind of avoided Sailor Moon for a really long time, or even like Fushigi actually. Like a lot of people, they're like, oh, I really hate Miyaka, blah 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 blah, and I was just like, Miyaka was my beacon.
Yeah, okay. Comparing it to Fushigi, like I still think Miyaka is annoying, but I think I actually do like romance more. So I think that's why it is interesting. These people who like are attracted most to the friendship, I'm like, I totally see that, and that is good, and I love it now as an intellectual person who tries not to hate femininity anymore. But like in my heart, I'm just like, I want cute romance.
And there's so many choices in Fushigi Yuki.
Right? So many hot guys, and then like they're all in love with Miyaka. Like it's cool. I love it. For sure. So we did get one person who just straight up was like, I love the romance. So at Shojo Scholar on Twitter said, it's so hard to pick one thing. With the manga, the romance between Usagi and Mamoru is simply incredible. They are the miracle romance. With the anime, I love how Usagi never gives up on anyone. Her compassion and love for even her enemies moves me to tears to this day. So I guess that plays into what you were saying earlier, like that perhaps the anime is not quite as romantic, actually, as the manga ends up being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I get stuck on, so I'm very curious, I guess, because I don't think I have a beat on this. What do people think about the age gapness of the romance in this?
Oh, where to start on this one? Like I think
asked a hard question.
well, so growing up, I think we all mostly ignored it. It's really not really addressed, and I think for the very few times it is mentioned, like you can kind of ignore it. You can just pretend like Mamoru is not so much older than Usagi, like. But in the manga, he's actually 17, which is, I mean, I still like. I wouldn't want my 14-year-old daughter dating a 17-year-old guy.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think most people have sort of a relief with that. And I think, I think one of the difficult things that I don't really share maybe with other heterosexual girls is that there's this idea of like, you should like an older man. And I love guys who are around my same age. So I just think it's kind of one of those things where, the template is that the guy should be older. So
Yeah. And I wonder how it played into with like, technically the part of the romance is shown in the future and like in the past. And like, does time even matter? What is age? They're like 950 in this arc sometimes. Like, who cares? So I was like, okay.
Well, I think that's the funniest thing about the manga. And this is so the word on the street is that we think that Mamoru and Usagi have sex in the second arc. And there's a scene where I don't know, Usagi's really ticked off at Chibiusa, and Mamoru's trying to like cheer her up, and they kind of like start making out, and then the next scene is like she's wearing his shirt, and you're just like, oh my gosh, what just happened?
Fade to black, sexy times.
And the most hilarious thing about this, like if you go and read this scene, I think Naoko Takeuchi was really kind of aware of the age gap, and like this particular scene happens like it's in this very like short time period where like the age gap between them is not as big. Like this is before like Mamoru's 18th birthday.
Yeah, yeah.
So she's very aware of how awkward this is, and she's done her legal due diligence there.
To be like, this is not like statutory rape or whatever. Like, okay, yeah. Interesting.
Well, how did you like the romance so far between Usagi and Mamoru?
I definitely, in the first arc, when we go more into like the past of how, you know, he was a prince from Earth and she's a moon princess, and they weren't supposed to be like, the moon princess isn't supposed to go down to Earth and fraternize with the humans, but like their love was so strong and everything. I was like, yes, I love it. I'm into it. Now that like their current day selves, I'm just like, okay, I don't really understand. It was also cute to go into the future and see them be like, we're still really into each other, perhaps maybe to the detriment of our child.
Oh
like,
yeah.
And I was like, okay, I guess that's good. So I just feel like, yeah, I can't get over how in the present day the maturity gap is still really big there. And like in one of these volumes, one of the last volume we read or whatever, Usagi was like, okay, I promise Mamoru that I will never be late again. And you know, like the little note is like totally lying, and I was like, that is some like abuser behavior, like abuser like lies right there. You know, like I don't know.
What was I gonna say? Well, I think oh, just like overall, because some people out there they're like, oh, Tuxedo Mask is useless. I hate him. And what I love, what I love about their relationship is like he's just so supportive of her. You know, like he's like,
Yeah.
I don't have any power, and I'm here to support you. Like I really love that about Mamoru.
No, yeah, I loved the scene again I think in the last volume where they're starting to get attacked by the new monsters and stuff, and they're with Naru and Umino is there, and Mamoru is just like, I will protect Naru and Umino while you guys like actually do all the hard parts, basically. And I was like, I love this guy. He's so funny.
Yeah.
He's great. No, I love how he's consistently like, I'm just here to protect, like not to protect you, just to like be here as a support guy that you love a lot. I'm like, yeah, that's good. So some other listener responses we got from @C Samaria L on Twitter. It's because the characters say my name all the time. This is from Crystal. So yeah, they do say your name all the time. But no, seriously, JK. Seriously, it's because it was the first show I watched that felt like it was aimed at me. The American cartoons on TV when I was a kid typically felt like they were aimed at boys, but Sailor Moon was sort of mysterious and glamorous. It was also my first anime, which added to why the show felt so different / slightly edgy, at least for an 8-year-old girl. True. So @Singing Buddy on Twitter said Sailor Moon was the first example I ever saw of a normal girl getting to be a superhero. She showed me you didn't always have to be brave to kick ass. You can cry and also save the day. I always love Usagi for teaching me that.
Same.
Yeah. The next one's pretty long. So yeah, so these two things, yeah, I'm just like, I was so obsessed with watching cartoons as a child, like but I didn't have cable, so like I just would watch them any of the 2 hours a day that they were on, or like Saturday mornings I'd just straight up watch cartoons for 5 hours straight.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
but I totally get it. Like, and I'm trying to think of like the cartoons that I watched as a kid, and I have to say, like, I mean, we had cable, but like I want to say there was some really great cartoons on just basic TV. Like I would run home and watch the Batman the animated series.
Yeah,
I watched the Superman, or not Superman, the Spider-Man 90s animation, which was like super funny and hilarious. I mean, again, I had brothers, so during that time, like there was like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was really
Yes.
popular, or even the Ghostbusters cartoon. So yeah, so like a lot of boy stuff that had these group of superheroes, and so like yeah, I totally relate to everybody who's saying like finally some girl superheroes.
For sure. But that's the funny thing is that like I mentioned that I feel like Sailor Moon only came on like early in the morning on like WB or something, just
Yeah.
like the weird slot before school. Whereas I remember when I was getting into anime at this time, like realizing that stuff from Japan like felt different.
Yeah.
Because we all had minor exposure to like Pokemon and stuff.
Yeah.
And again, I was really into Digimon. um, but I feel like the first ones that made me be like this anime thing is different and special, were Cardcaptor Sakura, Cardcaptors, and
Yeah.
then The Vision of Escaflowne when it aired like 12 episodes on Fox Kids. Like that, Escaflowne is what sent me down,
Yeah.
real hardcore. Yeah. But so those things came on, on Saturday mornings, and I'm like, I just like maybe if Sailor Moon had been given that attention on, the 6 channels that you don't need to pay money to
Yeah.
get.
I mean, I was insane. Like I woke up to watch it early before school. And my parents were like my dad was so weirded out because he's like, "What's going on?" And it was really strange too because I would go in the basement to watch it because I think at that point I kind of knew like it was a little like different, you know?
You were like,
So
this is scandalous in some way.
yeah, and
All
so
these
he was
pastel colors.
I distinctly remember my dad just being like again, really weirded out that I was waking up early to watch this TV show, and he's just like, don't be late for the bus. I'm like, yeah, sure, okay, Dad.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm just like, I mean, I guess I could have employed my VCR to like record, but I did not. Foolish young me just didn't have the guts to watch Sailor Moon.
You had to really work for it sometimes.
You had to work for it, and I was like, I'm lazy and I like sleeping. So at Pumpkin Landing on Twitter said, that's a big question. I know it is. Lots of things, but I guess the main things would be it's okay to be a girl. Usagi is a superhero, but also, just a girl. IDK. She has real life concerns and knows what she wants. And as an assigned male at birth, non-binary, I tend to tear up when she gives her speeches about how important certain things are, and she'll never forgive you for destroying the joys, dreams, etc. of girls. I think it's played as Usagi has weird priorities, but I really appreciate her for it. Usagi has weird priorities.
I think her priors are exactly where they need to be. Eat, sleep, and play video games, right?
Yeah, like heck yeah. I was like, wait, them going to the arcade all the time. I think my ex boyfriend's siblings, former husband. I know that's a strange chain, but that person used to work at video game companies, and we used to talk about gender and video games and how now it feels much more like a masculine thing in a lot of ways, even though that's because we discredit some types of video games, like mobile games and stuff are still not like seen fully as
Right.
video games, even though they are. So we were talking about gender, and they were like, in the past, like in the 90s, 80s and 90s, there wasn't this big of a gender distinction. I like kind of like seeing that in Sailor Moon, like replicated of like, we all just go to arcades and like it's fine and fun.
Yeah, and I think what I love about Sailor Moon is that, Naoko Takeuchi put a lot of herself into these characters, and so when she was stressed out from school, that's what she did. She went to the arcade, and she also like read like sci-fi fantasy books, and so I kind of feel really akin to her because she just has diverse interests and not always necessarily very, I don't know, typical, or I don't know. It's hard to say like, oh, boys like this, girls like this. Like, I think like
Yeah.
there's so much out there that it's really interesting. So she just has interests.
Yeah. I mean, it's good that Takeuchi was like, hey, girls like this stuff too. Why can't they just be a superhero team too? Like, totally. Why not?
Yeah.
That's true. I love it. So at Pumpkin Landing also says, girls being badasses. I love seeing these wonderful young women stare down evil, even if at first Usagi is very much not, and like, why do I have to do this? Which, girl, same. I feel you. Okay, pause. Wait. The funny thing about that is she initially was like, she sees Sailor V being hyped up in the news and everything, and she's like, that sounds so fun and easy, like fighting bad guys all day. Like that's easier than like going to school and stuff. And then the first time she has to do it, she's like, no,
Yeah.
why? So hard, hate it.
The consequences of my own actions. Oh no.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. So at Pumpkin Landing, the like last thing was the animation. My goddess! Every time I watch the transformations, I'm blown away. It's so gorgeous. I wish I could Moon Prism Power makeup. Anyway, sorry for such a long response. Haha! I love this anime. I've loved it since I was a kid, even though I still haven't finished it. It's very dear to my heart, and someday I'll read the manga. I wish it a place in the hearts of every generation. P.S. Sailor Jupiter for the win. Oh, we're gonna get into Sailor rankings later, but so you now have an excuse to read the manga right now.
Absolutely, do it.
Do it. All right, so there's only a couple responses left. So at Albion I still mess this one up. But for a moment in France, Sailor Moon and Saint Seiya aired at the same time. So making comparisons between the show with the same setting, 5 protag friends, some BBEGs, a lot of drama, while telling a totally different story was a thing for me, at least. As much as I love Saint Seiya, Sailor Moon touched me much more because the girls were all relatable characters in and out of the battlefield, caring for each other all the time, and not only when danger is around. They acted like real teenagers, funny yet with flaws, even if they saved the day. Usagi was my favorite because of her compassion and kindness.
Aww.
Usagi? I mean, hard agree. Annylicious on Twitter said, girls' friendship can't be enemies. Nobody's brought up campy enemies yet, so I like that. But fun backstories, nostalgic art style, very queer, iconic lead. So much to pick. And so the queerness, nobody's brought that up yet either. So the anime I felt was more queer because it also had the stuff with like,
oh yeah,
Jada or no,
Kunside and Soy Soy.
Yeah. But we're starting to get to the gay.
Yeah, I think thinking about campy enemies, I feel like they're probably a bit more campy in the anime because the enemies aren't around for very long in the manga.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to be campy.
They're still very like, I am just an enemy of the week and I'm silly and now I'm dead.
I suppose like if there was like a drag barrel, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Like he would be the one to do.
Yeah, you're like, get it together. Yeah, for sure. I guess I have a question. Okay, so I know that Neptune and Uranus are like gay for each other, and that's true in the anime and presumably in the manga. Is this thing where Uranus is like super like hitting on Usagi in weird ways? Does that happen in the anime?
It definitely happens in Crystal. Does it happen in the 90s anime? Not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's definitely the sense I got from my husband because he was like, I don't know that the manga is like as gay. And I was like, well, she just straight up kissed Sailor Moon. So like, I don't know.
Oh, the manga, I mean, I would say the manga is very gay. And actually there's this, if you get a hold of like the old Tokyo Pop manga, and I can't remember what volume this is in, but like Naoko, like in one of the kind of like freebie sections, she drew this like really hot and scandalous image of Minako and Usagi together, where like Minako is just like grabbing like Usagi's boob, like, and I have to say, like, it's kind of hot and like and yeah, super gay.
Super gay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, interesting. It's just so interesting how all the different versions, it's like gay, but in different ways. Like,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, this is true. Yeah.
Final comment was from @CC Jikato. I love Usagi, that Usagi is such a relatable heroine, and everything she does is a total mood. I love the friendships and Naoko's beautiful, elegant art, and all the fabulous fashion designs, and Sailor Uranus and Neptune are such amazing lesbian icons.
They are. They are. I'm so
I feel like
happy they exist.
yeah. So my comment is like, when is Takeuchi gonna finish Hunter x Hunter? Like that's
right.
that's what I've been waiting for, right? Like, move on to Hunter x Hunter, finish it.
Yeah.
She can do it. All right, so I did want to rank, since we rank the Sailor Scouts that we've met so far, and I'm just discounting Uranus and Neptune because like we're not
there yet.
Our allies yet. Yeah, like
next episode or next section, part 2.
Yeah. So you have your ranking already. So you go first because I'm like,
should I go from least to best or best to least?
Least to best.
Okay. So I feel bad for saying this. So Sailor Mercury is like my least favorite, but I'll say this. It's probably because like I'm probably most similar to her. Like I'm the brainy one of the group, and you kind of you gravitate towards people who are different from you, right? So
opposites attract, yeah.
Then my second least is Sailor Pluto, although I like super admire her. She's not really in it a lot, so I think it's hard to kind of really get her number, I guess. The next one on my list is Sailor Jupiter, and I don't know. I mean, I guess like I don't know. I just don't gravitate to her, even though I know a lot of people like they love how she's like super strong and everybody thinks she's scary, but in reality, like, she's just a softie, right?
Yeah, she's a tsundere in a way. Not quite a tsundere, but has some of those tendencies.
I do. She is actually described in the manga as like being the older sister type. So I do actually kind of like that kind of aspect of her. Like when other characters are kind of being bratty or whatever, I feel like most of the time she's above the fray.
Yeah.
And then next would be Sailor Chibi Moon. I think she got a short shaft in the 90s anime in the second arc, where her arc in the manga is very different, where she's 900 years old, yet she still looks like a kid, and she's unable to transform into a Sailor Guardian. And so I really felt for her, and I think she's so much more lovable in the manga than she is in the anime sometimes. And then we have Sailor Venus. I mean, she's kind of like, Usagi, 2.0. So I just love how she's super funny. She really goes for the gold. Like, she has no shame. And then also, like, she's super funny. She super messes up sometimes. And but when she has to be serious, like, she will cut. She will cut you.
Yeah. Cut you.
And then after that, I have Sailor Mars, and again, like I kind of gravitate towards, characters that are kind of unlike myself. Like I just thought she was so mature and elegant, and I guess when I was a kid, I didn't really think of myself like that. So I love that about her. And then my top character is Sailor Moon, because I guess I felt a lot of like I'm the oldest in my family, so I felt like pressured to be responsible, to get good grades in school, and so having Usagi just being like a hot mess but also the hero, like I love that.
That's interesting. That might be why my friend likes it too, that I mentioned earlier. Yeah. Like I think she had similar things growing up and must have like liked how messy they all get to be.
Yeah. How about you?
I feel like we since you love superheroes and I'm like, I do not like superheroes. I think we have some differences here in the Sailor Scouts we like as well. So I'm like, I actually really like Sailor Pluto. I might put her first.
Okay.
I'm kind of attracted to that. Like, she's supposed to just be trapped in this dimension where nobody else can like come see her, and she has all these responsibilities, and she does the self-sacrifice thing. My husband makes fun of me a lot for this, where I grew up being raised Catholic, and like I'm not religious now. Like, I like reject that. He's like, but you have so many, because he's training to be a rabbi, and he's like, you have so many of like the things that you value are so rooted in like the Catholic self-sacrifice, like suffering crap. And he's like, you think that you're not religious, but like your values still are like super steeped in that. And I'm like, okay, well, fair enough.
I totally get it. I think he's on to something there.
Yeah. And then, so I do really like Sailor Jupiter, because I do like that she's just like a badass, but also sweet. I'm like, I really like that character. Then it gets kind of dicey. I think I like Sailor Mars for some of the same reasons that you do, but I also think that sometimes when she's supposed to be elegant, she comes off as very funny to me, because she just has like evil crows and stuff.
Yeah, she's kind of a weirdo.
Yeah, she's just a weirdo, and I'm like, all right, I can get behind that for sure. I realize I'm going best to least because that's easier for me. So I made you do the opposite, but then it gets kind of dicey. I'm like, I guess I like Mercury. I think that in the beginning she was going to be more fun. I like that she gets to have VR glasses.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm like, yeah, this girl just lives in VR. Like, that's cool. Like, whatever. And then, like, I feel like Sailor Moon, Sailor Chibi Moon, Sailor Venus, they're all kind of like similar to me. I think I might like Chibi Moon the most of those remaining three. I will say also that in the second arc, where she gets to be evil and like transform, like her awakening is initially dark and evil, and the way that she's drawn, I'm like, this is the stuff of nightmares for me. Like, I'm gonna have nightmares about this.
Oh no.
Like, where she doesn't have like irises or anything, and she's just dressed all in black. I was like, no. And her hair's all funny. I was like, no. It really got me somehow. I feel like I might like Sailor Moon the least, because I just don't respect the whiny ones. I don't. But like Sailor Venus, Sailor Venus, I'm just like, I don't know. I guess if I read when I read the Sailor V manga, she will have more of a personality. But right now, I'm just like, she's just here to be like fake Sailor Moon. Like, I don't know.
It's true. It's true.
True. So just to kind of sum up some of the things we've been saying. So I actually, we got through 2 full arcs, and I guess I didn't know that Sailor Moon was going to be so much about like time travel or whatever.
Yeah, right?
And so, I started to, everything goes so fast in the manga and everything. And I was starting to get cranky with my husband. I was like, I don't understand. Like, why is Chibi Moon allowed to stay in the present? Like, doesn't that mess up the time thing? And he was like, well, if it's a closed time loop, then it already happened in the future, so it's fine. I'm like, but is it a closed time loop? I'm not convinced.
Well, usually, like, I think it's when like Chibiusa disappears. That's when like shit is going the other way. So
yeah.
If she's
like,
there, you're
bad.
pretty safe.
Okay, yeah. And you're like, well, they had sex in this arc, so like she's gonna come. Like, okay. And yeah, so then we were looking up. My husband was like, well, because I was like, all the mechanics don't make sense to me, and I don't understand what's going on. And he's like, well, Takeuchi didn't plan for this to be a whole big thing, right?
No,
basically Sailor V came out and they were like, it was pretty popular, so Toei or whoever came was like, hey, we want to sell some toys, right? And so Takeuchi was like, all right, I'll make Sailor Moon, and she'll be part of a wide cast, so there's lots of different personalities and toys to sell. But she basically only came up with the first arc, so only the Dark Kingdom stuff. And then they were like, it's so popular, we have to keep going.
And I think that's like, so it's about the past in the first arc. And I think
Yeah.
when they realized it was going to at least go for another season, she's like, well, let's do the future.
Let's do the future now. Only logical thing to do. And I was like, what? What? I'm so confused. Yeah, so all that stuff didn't make sense to me. And then so we've touched on superheroes. I don't think that we've actually mentioned, how it's mixed with magical girl tropes, and like there's a whiff of fairy tales. We'll get there.
Yeah. No, and there's a lot of Naoko draws a lot from different fairy tales throughout Sailor Moon. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, but this was interesting to me because if you listen to other episodes of this podcast, ones pertaining to magical girl series like Cardcaptor Sakura, or gosh, now the name escapes me. Tokyo Mew Mew. That's what I'm thinking of. So the Tokyo Mew Mew one, I'm like, I just really don't like magical girls was my claim. But now I'm like, wait, no, wait a second. I think it's not that I don't like magical girls, because apparently Sailor Moon came, and by adding all the like superhero and Super Sentai like kind of stuff, it changed what magical girls have been in my lifetime. So like Sailor Moon has existed for most of my lifetime. So like it like changed what the tropes of the genre, and like these transformations and like bad guy of the week or whatever kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, magical girls before that apparently were just, girls who had any type of power. They didn't necessarily have to like fight bad guys and have these transformation sequences and blah 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 blah. And so I'm like, oh, okay, no, it's still just that I just like superheroes. Like I hate Marvel movies and stuff. And I'm like, it still comes back to that.
It's like actually really funny. I think throughout Sailor Moon, there's like this theme of idols, right? Like Minako really wants to be an idol.
Yeah.
And I think for the longest time, like I just did not get it. I was like, I don't understand this obsession with idols. And then like you realize with the history of magical girls, like that was a total thing. Like that's what magical girls were. Like they were like idols, and that was their transformation. Like I'm talking about Creamy Mammy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's really, and actually what's totally fascinating about the magical girls genre is that like the kind of setup of a main character who's kind of like from some magical foreign place, and then she has her two friends who are more kind of deeply relatable to like Japanese culture. Like that's like a trope that's been going on for quite some time, and I when I learned that, I was like really kind of shocked.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just like, oh, like I did a recent episode about Alice 19th, and I was like, I don't think I would call this a magical girl series, but now I retract that statement. And I do call it a magical girl series, just a more typical, like old school magical girl series.
Yeah.
And the idol thing, there was definitely one chapter's like spread where all the Sailor Scouts were in it, and I was like, they're just a J-pop or K-pop group or something right here. Like that's what's happening right now. And so I guess to tie together the time stuff and the superhero talk. So one of the things that I think what gets me about superhero things is that this thought kind of stems from in college, or like I first encountered this realization in college. I had a college class where we had to watch The Incredibles. And the main point of the discussion, to the distress of most people in the class, but to me, I was like, yes, this explains everything that I never knew, like I couldn't articulate before, was that our teacher was like, yeah, so, you understand that this movie is about how the superheroes created their own problems, for sure. Like, because they reject the kid who wanted to be a superhero. Like they're dismissive of him, and then he comes back as the evil character, and like it's just a loop, right? He's like, that's what's happening here. And I was like, oh yes, superheroes create their own problems. Like, and that is somewhat directly brought up especially in the second arc of this, when then into the future, the Black Moon arc. Like Chibiusa's like, I did this, and like, or the argument of Black Moon, which I was like, at first I was like, yes, these guys, they get it. But then they started equating things like falsely. And I was like, no, why you got the war does not have to be like the logical thing, whatever, of everything.
Yeah. I think like kind of the big joke for the second arc is like you're kind of sitting there and you're thinking, you're like, gee, this Neo Queen Serenity is kind of like a dictator. You're like, this is and I think too, like Naoko kind of realizes this too. Like it's a little uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. Like she doesn't come off as paying attention to Chibiusa, so Chibiusa takes the legendary silver crystal and like that, you know, like unprotects the kingdom at a critical time where the Black Moon people are attacking, and so like chaos happens. And so like that's overtly brought up, and they're like, no, but it's not your fault. And I'm like, yes, it is.
Well, you know, it's funny you kind of bring that up, because I think if I were to kind of critique the superhero genre, I think what's kind of, I think for the long time, this is what I loved about it, was like, you know, there's good guys and there's bad guys, and it's pretty black and white. And, you know, as I've kind of been evolving, you know, real life isn't black and white, and really even for your own self, like you need to realize what your own flaws are, and you know, you're not always going to get it right. So I think, you know, I guess that maybe that's kind of what I like about the second arc, is that, you know, grown up Usagi is not like the most perfect person. She kind of fails her daughter, and that causes problems.
Yeah, and I felt like the villains were more like, again, they had a seed of a actual good thought where they were like, hey, living forever is not how this is supposed to go. Like, it's weird and has corrupted what makes us human. And I mean, I don't agree with what they thought makes us human is the issue, right? Like, because they're just like, humans should have to go to war with each other all the time. I'm like, what? How is that the logical conclusion? Like, the peace part is not really the issue here. It's perhaps the disruption of the cycle that's the issue here. Yeah, so no, it's totally, and like superheroes, it's like the presence of superpowers is like, if you have a superpower, then there's always going to kind of be like this evil super force, right? Like it's always just like, again, the creation of the powers creates a different issue. And you know, it's not like superheroes are saving you from something that existed before. Without them, we would all die. And I'm like, no, like they're just intrinsically linked together. Like you can't uncouple them.
And well, I mean, you kind of touch on something that is discussed in later volumes. So let's put a pin in it. We'll discuss it later.
Okay, intriguing. Okay, so the only other thing is, or one of the bigger things. We have a few more things, but like, so the translations. As you mentioned earlier, this middle Kodansha one is perhaps not well liked. I assume the Tokyo Pop version is also not well liked because it was flipped and heavily localized, and I'm sure we all try to pretend that just doesn't exist anymore.
I mean, I personally, actually, you know, I think, you know, a lot of people, you know, dislike it in the sense of that, you know, the characters' names, like Usagi's called Bunny throughout the Tokyo Pop version.
Yeah.
There's really kind of some strange choices made there. But I would have to say, like, they actually did a pretty good job at least trying to adapt it, like not having to translate it so literally. So they did some good choices. I'll give them that.
I mean, that's fair. I often am always like, you know what? I mean, we all hate Tokyo Pop. Tokyo Pop made bad business and moral decisions, but like their translations at times were actually better than some of the more modern translations we get. And I'm like, and that's very sad.
Yep. Yes.
But so let's talk about some of these choices that happened in this middle edition.
I'm actually really glad you brought this up. So go for it.
So the thing that really, so I read the first 2 volumes as the new collection, right? And for a second, I forgot that I was reading the new collection first. And then I was like, oh wait, this is the best one. So then I had to go back to the 2012 from William Flanagan. And they put Legendary Silver Crystal in scare quotes each time. And I was like, no, boy.
I don't know. I got nothing. Like, it also like pisses me off to no end.
It's so annoying to read. It doesn't scan well. There's no reason.
And then another kind of issue is that, so the name of the silver crystal. So in the Eternal editions, the translators actually call it the mystical silver crystal. Now, I super love this translation because, you know, the word that they're trying to translate there's no really good translation for Mabaroshi. And so mystical like gets to that like very powerful but also spiritual essence of what the silver crystal is. So I love that. But unfortunately, they made some changes yet again to the Naoko Takeuchi collection, and they've put it back to legendary silver crystal. Thankfully, this time without the scare quotes.
Yeah, I was like, oh gosh, I just thought it was always legendaries.
And you know, it's not a bad choice per se, but like when I think of the word legendary, I think of it much more of like an adjective rather than like a title or name. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, well, legendary also implies that like people know about it, you know, like it's been passed down.
And I guess
in
it's
legends.
true. It's true. Like everybody, like you'll find out in like everybody, all the bad guys know about this legendary silver crystal. So I guess that is true.
But I don't think it's true of like people on the world though. That's why it feels wrong, right?
Like normal people, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's just all the bad guys are always like, we must obtain the precious.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
It's
Exactly.
like, shut up. But yeah, no, the William Flanagan one also just has some very strange lines. Like I brought up whiff as a word earlier, and there was a time where what Asanuma was his name, classmate of Mamoru, he says they have a whiff of secrets, and I'm like, what does that mean? That's not how you use the word. Who says that? Like,
that's hilarious. Like I don't remember that part, but that is hilarious.
I don't know. I was very confused.
Or even like I think in the first few pages, like Usagi Usagi's late for school, and she's like, "Mom, you dummy, you should have woken me up." I'm like, "Oh my God!" Like if I ever called my mother a dummy, like I'd be grounded to like I was an adult.
You're like, I wouldn't be allowed on this podcast.
I would not be alive right now.
Yeah, there was just so many choices. But I think the thing that got people riled up about the Takeuchi collection translation that I put, so I took a picture at the end of volume 1. There's a translator's note, and so the translators are Alethea and Athena Nimbley. They're twins, and they translated like Fruits Basket and stuff before. So everybody really loves them. But so they put a translator's note about rental video stores that was just so elaborate that like, and I get what they were going for, because I think it actually does achieve what they wanted, which was to be very funny for older readers.
Yeah.
And like be very serious for younger readers, like actually be helpful for younger readers. But I was just like, was it necessary? Like, is that really that confusing of a concept? I don't think so. It's like in the time before Netflix, there was things called rental stores.
Well,
like,
you know, it's actually kind of funny. Like I don't know, like maybe this is on TikTok or on YouTube. Like there are some videos out there of like people have given, I guess, Gen Z, like, here's a rotary phone, and they're completely perplexed by it. So
they just don't know what it is.
They're just like, how do you do this? Like, you know, and I mean, it's something, unless you like have kids or are around young people a lot, like sometimes I think it's really hard to gauge what they know and don't know. So, yeah.
That's true. I've been hearing increasing stories of how, I guess, not Gen Z, but Generation Alpha, I guess, doesn't know how to use desktops.
Yes.
Like they don't know how to like attach files.
Yes, I heard that too. It's mind-blowing to me.
And I'm like, what? Because all they do is use like iPads and their phones. Yeah, so they're not used to a desktop interface. And I'm like, that's so strange. I'm a dinosaur.
I mean, if I were to pick things like they would know and not know about, like that's not one I would think of. So, yeah.
Do they know about Sailor Moon? That's the critical question.
Oh my gosh. Well, actually, the funny thing, so my neighbor, he has a daughter who's 12 years old. She's
Mhm.
amazing, and she actually really likes Sailor Moon. And I asked her, I was just like, well, who are your favorite characters? Like, what's your favorite season? And she's like, I hate what they did to Uranus and Neptune. They made them cousins in the dub, and I was just like, you're 12. You were born
Yeah,
in
how did you have
2010.
access
How
to
did you
that?
know about this?
Yeah.
I was so surprised.
That is surprising. Like, why are you offended for something that you would never have to interact with? Like,
But I think we, OG fans, they talk about it a lot, that's like a continuing joke. So I guess it's not totally surprising, but yeah.
oh my gosh. Well, I think what makes me sad about all these editions is still that I felt like you're not going to get everything you want in one edition because, again, I read the first two as the Takeuchi collection. So then I switched to volume 3 of the 2012 version, which I only had to read like a chapter or two from that because the new versions are slightly longer. But I looked at the front and I was like, oh, the unconventional character page that I really liked where
Oh yeah.
it was all like funkily laid out and everything. I was like, that's in color in the 2012 version, but it's just in black and white in the Takeuchi collection. And I was like, why does everything have to be so hard, Anne? Like,
well, the Eternal editions.
well, the Eternal edition.
Well, I think one of the things I love about the Eternal editions, and I'm not getting paid to say this, by the way, is actually the trim size is so huge. It pretty much recreates most closely about what Sailor Moon was like to read in the mangas. The magazine. The magazine.
Yeah, the magazine.
And
okay. Yeah.
I guess before that, I never, really thought about how, like, when Naoko was drawing her pictures, like she really meant, to see this in this really big page. So, again, I know that edition is not everybody's cup of tea, but I do think if you want to get this really unique experience with this bigger page size, it's really exciting, and you should do it.
Okay, that's true. I didn't think about how it would be closer to the magazine size. That makes sense. Yeah. Can I ask an art question?
Sure.
And it's, why can't Takeuchi draw cats?
I know, right? Like, it's kind of like really crazy about how, like, I don't know, you have like these real life scenery, and then you get to the cats and they're just like, I don't know. Like,
their mouths open and it's just a white space. There's no like depth to it.
Like, are they really cats? I don't know. Maybe they really are aliens.
Yeah, maybe. I'm just like, is she purposely doing this? Is this like a joke? Or is this like, animals are very hard to draw, so she's just like, I'm not.
Yeah. It is pretty funny.
I just couldn't tell. There was one page I showed my husband. I think it was a Artemis or Luna. It doesn't matter. But like the eyes were like the wrong proportion. It was very funny, and I was just like, "What is happening right now?" But then it's all the Sailor Scouts are like beautiful. Like their hair is so lovingly rendered. Those big beautiful like 90s eyes and everything. I was like, I don't understand, but okay. I'm just gonna assume it's a joke at this point. It's a joke. It's a gag.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. It's really, since like this was like the first manga I ever read, like to me, everything was just so beautiful and new. I had never seen anything like that before. But obviously, like, this is kind of like typical of like shoujo manga, and it's not, anything necessarily special among other kind of typical shoujo stuff. So I don't know. I do kind of really love like how Naoko drew from like actual runway shows. Like, I thought that was so cool. And I think, we talked about, the cartoons we watched growing up, and I kind of felt like a lot of like female superheroes were very like adult-like, and they were just very muscly or toned. And, as an 11-year-old girl, like I didn't feel that way about my body. So I just really loved how like just this very simple the simple drawings, that's how I kind of felt like my body, like it wasn't, all these muscles and
Yeah.
and or just like this kind of like maybe softer kind of look to her characters. That was something that I was really drawn to.
Yeah, I would say, thinking about female superheroes in like American comics, they're also gonna be more sexualized, I feel like. Not that the Sailor Scouts aren't like nice to look at or anything, right? But I'm just like, it's not like sexy times,
Yeah, or just like
like
like an adult woman, and
yeah.
you know, and Sailor Moon's kind of like really in that space between childhood and adulthood. So you're all kind of like intended for like tween girls who are going through puberty. So the readers are kind of working all that out for themselves as well as the characters.
Yeah, yeah. I'm being reminded that I'm like, okay, a resentment I have towards Sailor Moon 2, and like I'm just kind of thinking about how like this time period where Sailor Moon came out, I feel like there was a great upswelling of shoujo. Like maybe that's, my nostalgia goggles, but I was actually like somewhat too young for these things. But I feel like right now it's like I'm like, I mean, there are shoujo series that I obviously love that are currently running, but I don't feel like there's like this one that everybody like loves is gravitating towards. Whereas I feel like there was a lot of great ones in the early to mid 90s where it's like, oh, these are so iconic even today, like,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. No, I totally agree, and I totally miss that. Like you talked about resentment. I kind of resent that like a lot of like the most popular anime right now are like shonen anime, and
yeah.
I don't know. I wish we at least had like a shoujo anime that's just really huge.
Yeah, we don't get these loving like long shoujo anime adaptations anymore, like there's no 54 episode Fishies, there's no 200 episodes Sailor Moon like happening, yeah, so my specific resentment is that like, the series that came out over 30 years ago is still the one shoujo that will ever be sent out in like when people have to like Barnes and Noble will send me emails being like hot manga right now, and they like feel the need to throw in a shoujo, and it's always Sailor Moon.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, ugh.
No, I feel ya. I feel ya. And I'm not very hip and cool, so I can't even really say like what's really hip in Japan right now. Like, yeah. Even things like Nana like are not like there's no like replacement for Nana out there right now, at least to my knowledge. I'm sure there's some shoujo out there that's just waiting to be found, and I hope they find it.
I hope we find it. Yeah, right. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up before we like kind of wrap up here?
No. Oh, well, I don't wanna I kind of was like, I think, well, just kind of keep in mind going forward too, like when I originally read the manga, I was slightly confused about like the silver crystal, like because Usagi kind of unalives herself and Tuxedo Mask.
Yeah.
And then like the essence of the silver crystal like goes into them and like keeps them alive. And I don't know, back in the day I was very confused by this. And then in the second arc, like very clearly, like there's two silver crystals that are being brought together. So they're this kind of very physical objects. But I think the key thing to know is that like going forward is like the silver crystal is very much representative of Usagi's will, like this very almost intangible type of power almost that only she can wield. And so, the silver crystal really can ebb and flow depending on how Usagi feels. So I think that's something to keep in mind going forward.
I love that there were two, and they were like, if they touch each other, everything gets destroyed. And I was like, okay, escalation.
That sounds like epic.
Yeah, it was both like, you can't use either of them when they're both in the same timeline. But if they touch each other, game over. Just like,
There's a lot of explaining to do there.
Yeah, I was like, okay. I agree. The power things are also very confusing to me, and I'm like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's how I
just go
usually
with
am just
it.
like, I don't care. Just go. We're just making stuff up as we go along. It's cool. I understand. Let's keep going. Like that's how I treat it.
And then the other thing I wanted to just touch on is like in the second arc, there's all these kind of like supernatural elements. Like in the first arc, some nuns spontaneously combust or something.
Yeah, there are some very unchill moments in this manga, like that just go really hard. And I was like, okay, that's just a rotting corpse. Like, what?
And I mentioned this because like in the 90s, like my brother and I were so obsessed with these like supernatural TV shows like Sightings and The Mysterious World of Arthur C. Clarke, where they would go into things like that, or like dowsings or mediums. And so whenever I read that arc, I just remember like it's just so 90s.
It does feel really 90s, and I like don't know how to explain, but like the Sixth Sense and like crop circles were just such a big thing.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're looking for your 90s nostalgia, the manga is where it's at.
Yeah. I was going to bring this up earlier too, and this is only semi-related, but I also think it's fascinating that Takeuchi apparently like studied chemistry or something, so that's why everything is like science-based. Yep. And I love that Flanagan just gave up at one of his translation notes was just like, I don't understand what these names mean. They're science. Takeuchi does, but I don't. And if you do, then like you're a chemist. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I was just like, what?
Yeah. Well, sometimes like, you know, like the things that Naoko really the names she chooses, there's like a lot of thought, you know, put into them, but there's some other things that are just like so out there. You're just like, girl, like what did you just? I don't even know what that is. Like,
why are we fighting Pharaoh 90 or whatever?
Oh, somebody explained that to me, and
really?
I forget now. I'll have to like go look back, and next time we'll go into that.
I was like, yeah, Pharaoh 90 is still going to be relevant.
All right. Yeah.
Make a note.
Yeah, I'm making a note on that one.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I think that is the first half of Sailor Moon, and next time we will have all of Sailor Moon to talk about. It's no big deal. Nobody knows what Sailor Moon is. It's only the most popular shoujo of all time. No big deal. All right. Well, so thanks for listening to Shojo and Tell. Comments, questions, constructive criticism, concerns. Need to gush about your favorite aspect of Sailor Moon? Email shoujoandtell@gmail.com or leave a comment on the episode's YouTube page. We're at Shojo and Tell on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. And where can people find you and your work on the internet?
You can find me at Shojo Power on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can read more about the ins and outs about the Sailor Moon anime manga on my website, shojopower.com.
Yeah, I was definitely just like going back through your website and reading articles like in preparation, and like reading other people's articles, comparing all the different translations of Sailor Moon. And I was like, all right, I feel like I'm going like down too deep of a rabbit hole. Ha! Okay. Are you excited every time you see a new episode from us? If so, please consider leaving a rating on Apple Podcasts. This will help the show reach more hearts, or at least ears. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next time, naturally, for the second half of Sailor Moon. Duh. So in the name of the moon, I'll punish you. Wait, no. That's not what I meant. I'm not going to punish you for listening to this podcast. Anyway, stay tuned. Until then, bye.
Bye.